Hello, my name is Priscilla Riti and I'm Bakang with matrix number CE190154. I will be explaining about question 1 and question 2. For question 1, before doing the soldering process, explain the things to pay attention to. First, we must put the soldering iron by thinning the tip with the solder. By doing this, it will improve the heat transfer from the iron to the item we're soldering. It can also protect the tip and decrease wear. The tip must be attached to the iron and screwed tightly in place. The soldering iron is turned on and heat up. Set the temperature to 400 degrees Celsius if using a soldering station with an adjustable temperature control. The tip of the soldering iron is wiped on a wet sponge to clean it. Next, the soldering iron is held in one hand and soldered with the other. The solder should be touched to the tip of the iron and ensure that the solder flows evenly around the tip. For question 2, state the equipment used to perform the soldering process. Firstly is the solder. When melted, solder is a metal or metal alloy that is used to bind metallic surfaces together. The most prevalent alloy is a mixture of tin and lead. The melting point of several tin lead alloys is lower than that of the parent metals. For soldering, the most common tin lead ratios are 60-40 and 63 and 37. Secondly is flux. Prior to soldering, this equipment is used to clean the conductor surfaces. Flux is a chemical agent that aids in the joining of metals by eliminating oxide residue while the soldering process is in progress. During the soldering process, flux eliminates oxidation from the conductors and preserves oxide-free surfaces at a high temperature. This allows all surfaces to properly moist. Third, soldering station. The temperature setting varies depending on the application. Before beginning the process, it is vital to verify the temperature. Soldering iron. To create a solder junction, transfer heat energy from the soldering iron to the solder core. Iron holder. Because of a soldering iron becomes hot, it is necessary to store it safely between soldering stations. This is where a soldering iron holder comes in helpful. Wet sponge. Cleaning the tip of the soldering iron with a moist sponge is quite beneficial. Because the tip is heated, it will oxidize quickly and become unclean. A clean tip transmits heat more quickly and simplifies soldering. Wire cutter. The wire cutter is a small but highly useful soldering tool. Cut lengthy components lengths with it and or strip the end of a wire with it. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and hi. My name is Rahman bin Sokri. My material number is DE180017. Okay, today for my part, I will present about the question 3. Okay, the question is describe the things to pay attention to when installing component on PCB. Okay, first, when installing component on PCB, the important thing that we need to pay attention is to prevent the mistake that may be occur. Okay, the things that we need to do is after fabrication process, make sure the PCB is in good condition and there is no problem to installing component. After that, we need to make sure that our tools such as solder tips, solder sucker, and solder wire are in the best condition before we do the component installing. And then the important thing is to make sure that the component that we want to apply at the PCB is the correct one, just like we design in the schematic, and the component can function completely. And then when installing the component to the track, make sure that the positioning of the component is in right condition to prevent from short circuit to happen. And then we put the component legs at the right position and make sure that the component leg did not overlap and did not overlap from the rail track. And then when we soldering the component at the PCB, we need to prevent to put our solder tip at our component leg directly for a long time to avoid the component from damage and burn out. And for the last one, we need to confirm that our component that we apply does not missing even a single part, and our installing component on PCB will be complete for the process. Okay, next for the question 4. The question is, suppose you have installed the components on the PCB with reference to lab 2 3D visualization. Take the top view and the bottom view to show the installation of the component for your circuit. Okay, this I have the view of the top and bottom for 3D visualization. Okay, for the first one is Cheong Ming. This is the top view and this is the bottom view. And for the second is we have Audrey. This is the top view for Audrey and this is the bottom view for Audrey. And this last one, it's me, Abdul Rahman. This is my top view for 3D visualizer and this is my bottom view. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.
Afternoon, Doctor. My name is Cheong Lee, AE190105. Today, I will present question 5, discussion and conclusion. So, I will begin with question 5. Are there any other alternative soldering technique beside a manual soldering to assemble the components? So, my answer is there are two types of soldering such as soft soldering and hard soldering. Soft soldering is a process that has the lowest filler metal melting point, which is less than around 400 degrees Celsius of all the soldering types. This process is used to join metals with a eutectic tin or lead alloy. Alloy is usually used as space filler metal. The liquefying temperature of the space filler alloy should not less than 400 degrees Celsius. The first step of soldering technique using an electric soldering iron is to ensure the pieces to be joined are cleaned by steel wool. Then, the pieces are placed together. Both soldering iron and multi-core solder are joined together. The passive flux melt out of the core solder when heating. Therefore, the area is covered and immediately followed by solder melting and flowing along the joint. Next is timing process. The separate pieces will be coated with a layer of solder before joining together. Next, I will present discussion. This lab provides the knowledge in electronic component assembling and testing of the PCB. PCB soldering is a process that connects two or more different electrical components on our circuit board. A soldering iron looks like a pen. It is an extremely hot tool which will melt the solder and using it to join the two pieces together. The step for soldering is prepare iron, prepare surface, place the components, apply heat, add solder to the joint and finish up. When soldering the PCB, the finished product must include the soldering surface is clean. Second is the solder joints must have enough mechanical strength so that the solder parts will not lose under any impact. The soldering must be safe and ensure electrical conductivity so that the product will not short circuit. Desoldering is to eliminate the solder from a circuit board. By using a desoldering pump, solder can be removed from a printed circuit board. Copper braid is used to absorb and remove the flux, and solder flux is melted by a soldering tip. Lastly, I will present about the conclusion. After this lab, we can familiarize with soldering equipment. Next, we are also understanding to practice soldering and desoldering techniques for connecting electronic components on PCB. We can test the assembled circuit for correct functionality. We know the soldering and desoldering process are important in electronics industry for electrical connections. Plumbers can also use this method to join the copper pipes. After this experiment, we become more confident and gain a lot of knowledge, and this will help us in future academic of our career. That's all from me. Thank you, Doctor.